dig right into it. You guys made some news today announcing some new guidelines around the use of AI in elections. I'm sure it's all stuff that the Davos set loved to hear. You banned the use of ChatGPT in political campaigns. You introduced cryptographic watermarks for images created by DALL-E to create kind of provenance and transparency around the use of AI-generated images. I read it and I thought, this is great. Some of these principles are shared by much larger platforms like Facebook and TikTok and YouTube, and they have struggled to enforce it. How do you make it real?
A lot of these are things that we've been doing for a long time, and we have a really strong safety systems team that not only sort of has monitoring, but we're actually able to leverage our own tools in order to scale our enforcement, which gives us, I think, a significant advantage. So there are also some really important partnerships, like with the National Association of the Secretaries of State, so we can surface authoritative voting information. So we have quite a few ways that we are able to enforce this.
Right, Sam, does this put your mind at ease that we don't, that OpenAI doesn't move the needle in some 77 upcoming critical democratic elections in 2024?
No, we're quite focused on it, and I think it's good that our mind is not at ease. I think it's good that we have a lot of anxiety and are going to do everything we can to get it as right as we can. I think our role is very different than the role of a distribution platform, but still important. We'll have to work with them too. It's like you generate here and distribute here, and there needs to be a good conversation between them. But we also have the benefit of having watched what's happened in previous cycles with previous technologies. And I don't think this will be the same as before. I think it's always a mistake to try to fight the last war, but we do get to take away some learnings from that. And so I wouldn't, I think it'd be terrible if I said, oh yeah, I'm not worried, I feel great. Like, we're gonna have to watch this incredibly closely this year. Super tight monitoring, super tight feedback loop.
Anna, you were at Facebook before OpenAI. So I almost apologize for asking this in this way, probably a trigger phrase, but do you worry about another Cambridge Analytica moment?
I think, as Sam alluded to, there are a lot of learnings that we can leverage, but also OpenAI from its inception has been a company that thinks about these issues, that it was one of the reasons that it was founded. So I think I am a lot less concerned because these are issues that our teams have been thinking about from the beginning of our building of these tools.
Sam, Donald Trump just won the Iowa caucus yesterday. We are now sort of confronted with the reality of this upcoming election. What do you think is at stake in the U.S. election for tech and for the safe stewardship of AI? Do you feel like that's a critical issue that voters should and will have to consider in this election?
I think the now confronted is part of the problem. I actually think most people who come to Davos...
Say that again? I didn't quite get that.
I think part of the problem is we're saying we're now confronted.
Yeah. It
never occurred to us that what Trump is saying might be resonating with a lot of people. And now all of a sudden, after this performance in Iowa, oh man. It's a very Davos-centric,
I've been here for 2 days, I guess.
So I would love if we had a lot more reflection and if we started a lot sooner and we didn't feel now confronted. But I think there's a lot at stake at this election. I think elections are, huge deals. I believe that America is going to be fine, no matter what happens in this election. I believe that AI is going to be fine, no matter what happens in this election. And we will have to work very hard to make it so. But this is not, no one wants to sit up here and hear me rant about politics, so I'm going to stop after this. But I think there has been a real failure to sort of learn lessons about what's kind of working for the citizens of America and what's not.
Anna, I want to ask you the same question. Taking your political background into account, what do you feel like for Silicon Valley, for AI is at stake in the U.S. election?
I think what has struck me and has been really remarkable is that the conversation around AI has remained very bipartisan. And so, I think that the one concern I have is that somehow...
Both parties hate it.
Yeah. No, but this is an area where Republicans tend to, of course, have an approach where they are not as in favor of regulation. But on this, I think there's agreement on both parties that they believe that something is needed on this technology. Senator Schumer has this bipartisan effort that he is running with his Republican counterparts. Again, when we speak to people in DC on both sides of the aisle, for now it seems like they're on the same page.
And do you feel like all the existing campaigns are equally articulate about the issues relating to AI?
I don't know that AI has really been a campaign issue to date, so it will be interesting to see how that evolves.
If we're right about what's going to happen here, this is like bigger than just a technological revolution in some sense. I mean, sort of like all technological revolutions or societal revolutions, but this one feels like it can be much more of that than usual. And so it is going to become a social issue, a political issue. It already has in some ways, but I think it is strange to both of us that it's not more of that already, but with what we expect to happen this year, not with the election, but just with the increase in the capabilities of the products, and as people really catch up with what's going to happen, what is happening, what's already happened, there's like a lot of inertia always in society.
Well, I mean, there are political figures in the U.S. and around the world, like Donald Trump, who have successfully tapped into a feeling of dislocation, anger of the working class, the feeling of it, exacerbating inequality or technology leaving people behind. Is there the danger that AI furthers those trends?
Yes, for sure. I think that's something to think about. But one of the things that surprised us very pleasantly on the upside, because when you start building a technology, you start doing research, you kind of say, well, we'll follow where the science leads us. And when you put a product, you'll say, this is going to co-evolve with society, and we'll follow where users lead us. But it's not, you get to steer it, but only somewhat. There's some which is just like, this is what the technology can do, this is how people want to use it, and this is what it's capable of. And this has been much more of a tool than I think we expected. It is not yet, and again, in the future it'll get better, but it's not yet like replacing jobs in the way that, to the degree that people thought it was going to. It is this incredible tool for productivity. And you can see people magnifying what they can do by a factor of 2 or 5, or in some way that doesn't even make sense to talk about a number because they just couldn't do the things at all before. And that is, I think, quite exciting. This new vision of the future that we didn't really see when we started.
I want to ask you about OpenAI's copyright issues. How important are publisher relations to OpenAI's business, considering, for example, the lawsuit last month filed against OpenAI by the New York Times?
They are important, but not for the reason people think. There is this belief held by some people that, man, you need all of my training data, and my training data is so valuable. And actually, that is generally not the case. We do not want to train on the New York Times data, for example. More generally, we're getting to a world where it's been like data, you just need more, you need more, you need more. You're going to run out of that at some point anyway. So a lot of our research has been how can we learn more from smaller amounts of very high quality data, and I think the world is going to figure that out. What we want to do with publishers, if they want, is when one of our users says, what happened at Davos today? Be able to say, here's an article from Bloomberg, here's an article from the New York Times, and here's like a little snippet. Or probably not a snippet, there's probably some cooler thing that we can do with the technology. And some people want to partner with us, some people don't. We've been striking a lot of great partnerships, and we have a lot more coming. And then, some people don't want to. We'd rather they just say we don't want to do that rather than sue us, but we'll defend ourselves. That's fine too.
I just heard you say you don't want to train on the New York Times. Does that mean, given the legal exposure, you would have done things differently as you trained your model?
Here is a tricky thing about that. The web is a big thing, and there are people who copy from the New York Times and put an article without attribution up on some website, and you don't know that's a New York Times article. If the New York Times wants to give us a database of all their articles, or someone else does, and say, hey, don't put anything out that's like a match for this, we can probably do a pretty good job. And we don't want to regurgitate someone else's content, but the problem is not as easy as it sounds in a vacuum. I think we can get that number down and down and down and have it be quite low, and that seems like a super reasonable thing to evaluate us on. If you have copyrighted content, whether or not it got put into someone else's thing without our knowledge, and you're willing to show us what it is and say, don't put this stuff as a direct response, we should be able to do that. Again, it won't 1,000 monkeys, 1,000 typewriters, whatever it is. Once in a while, the model will just generate something very close. But on the whole, we should be able to do a great job with this. So there's all the negatives of this. People are like, you know, don't do this. But the positives are, I think there's going to be great new ways to consume and monetize news and other published content. And for every one New York Times situation we have many more super productive things about people that are excited to build the future and not do their theatrics.
And what?
Should I say what GPTs are first?
Yeah, sure.
So GPTs are a way to do a very lightweight customization of ChatGPT. And if you want it to behave in a particular way, to use particular data, to be able to call out to an external service, you can make this thing, and you can do all sorts of great stuff with it. And then we just recently launched a store where you can see what other people have built and you can share it. And I mean, personally, one that I have loved is All Trails. I have this every other weekend. I like to go for a long hike, and there's always the version of Netflix that other people have, where it's takes an hour to figure out what to watch. It takes me 2 hours to figure out what hike to do. And the All Trails thing to say, I want this, I want that. And, you know, I've already done this one, and here's a great hike. It sounds silly, but I love that one.
Have you added any GPTs of your own?
Have I made any?
Yeah.
I have not put any in the store. Maybe I will.
Can you give us an update on the volume or the pace at which you're seeing new GPTs?
The number I know is that there have been 3 million created before we launched the store. I have been in the middle of this trip around the world that has been quite hectic, and I have not been doing my normal daily metrics tracking. So I don't know how it's going since launch, but I'll tell you by the slowness of ChatGPT, it's probably doing really well. I had a different relationship with it because of that handle and because of the way it looked. I was like, oh, I can move this thing around. I could unplug it and throw it out the window if it tried to wake up and take over. That's nice. And I think the way we design our technology and our products really does matter.
Well, we look forward to a handle on the OpenAI
There's
phone.
no handle on that.
Anna, we feel so privileged to be one of your first stops here in Davos. Thank you both for
Thank you
joining
for having
us.
us. A different relationship with it because of that handle and because of the way it looked. I was like, oh, I can move this thing around. I could unplug it and throw it out the window if it tried to wake up and take over. That's nice. And I think the way we design our technology and our products really does matter.
Well, we look forward to a handle on the OpenAI
There's
phone.
no handle on that.
Anna, we feel so privileged to be one of your first stops here in Davos. Thank you both for
Thank you
joining
for
us.
having us.